We are here live today at Cinco de Mayo Festival in Denver, Colorado. And I'm joined, delighted to say, by a colleague who I have a lot of respect for. She is a leader in the local Hispanic and Mexican community, an activist of many, many years, and has been carrying out the legacy of her famous father, who started the Escuela school here in Denver. Nita Gonzales, a civil rights leader in his own time, recognized and respected across the country. This is Corky's oldest daughter, I believe.
Yes.
And we are delighted that you're here with us, Nita. For a few minutes, I just want to chat a little bit with you. This is our first Free Speech TV presence at this festival, which has grown in size over the years, as you have seen.
Right.
And has become now one of the largest Hispanic Latino festivals in the entire country. What's your perspective on this event?
Well, first I would be remiss if I didn't talk about how this all came about and the whole issue of Cinco de Mayo, and I want to make that really clear because
and a little bit of the history
of the history, exactly, because
right.
you get lost in
Exactly.
festivals around. How did this happen?
It's not all about
right,
booze
right,
and music and having a good time.
and exactly. Although that's important
That's
to people.
important, right? But it's a historical aspect.
Absolutely. In 1853, Benito Juarez, who was then president of Mexico, was exiled from Mexico and was in struggle with the French and the English, who had attempted to intervene in Mexico. Another, again, European colonization and oppression at its height and at its best. And Benito Juarez, which people don't attribute a great deal to around Cinco de Mayo, but Benito Juarez was a Zapotec Indian. Imagine that. First time an Indian was president of Mexico, as should be, given Mexico's history.
Right.
Trying
Given
to
the size of the indigenous population.
Absolutely. And trying to struggle against the intervention of Britain and France. And more importantly, it was, the greater degree was French.
Right.
The French intervention, who then sent Maximilian to be Maximilian I, or the king of Mexico, if you will. Benito Juarez is the father of the Mexican Constitution,
yes.
and is the father of the reform that was going on at that point,
Right.
and stood up against the French. And part of it, he had a Prime Minister, Seguin, who was the general, who decided that he was going to, well, he made him general to fight in the northern part against the French intervention.
Right.
As a result, we had the battle at Puebla, Mexico.
On the 5th of May.
On the 5th of May,
Right.
where when what it speaks to is an incredible will of people who speak up for freedom and for justice, who stand up. I mean, it was an it was a group of people that came together under the direction of this general,
right.
who stood up for Mexico and underfunded,
Right.
weren't supplied,
Ill-equipped.
Ill-equipped for
Right.
the fight, and defeated one of the greatest
One of the greatest armies in the world.
the
Right.
French, and drove them out. And he arrested. He went back. Benito Juarez went back, arrested Maximilian, and tried him, and he was found guilty, and he was destined to be executed. Many people asked for amnesty. I think the United States intervened to try to get that.
Right.
But Benito Juarez he refused. He said no. He had his trial. He's going to be executed. And what the message was is that wherever you have people that have this incredible desire for freedom and justice, they will stand up, and they stand up because of that way to be free. So Cinco de Mayo,
Right.
although an important fight, is not el 16 de septiembre, which is an incredible holiday in Mexico, and that's 16th of September, Mexico's independence from Spain.
Right.
But it does speak to people all being willing to stand up against all odds.
Right, and this is a historical event, the victory over the French, that took place about 150 years ago.
Well,
right?
in 1860s,
Right.
Exactly.
And here we are in 2012, and the spirit of that victory is still being celebrated in Latino and Hispanic communities, particularly Mexican communities, in the U.S.
Let me be clear.
Is it a bigger holiday in the U.S.?
It is not even a holiday. It's a big fiesta in the
fiesta, yes.
in the U.S. But what people have to understand is that it didn't start out as a fiesta. We, the Chicano movement of the 60s and 70s, reclaimed those types of days and actions that would be able to model for our people here that we come from this legacy and we need to stand up. So we did marches. We did not do fiestas in Denver, Colorado. We did marches and rallies on Cinco de Mayo. This was a time and el 16, 16th of September. This is where our people came together. And let me also be clear about another part of this history. We don't call ourselves Hispanics. I don't.
Right.
When we do that, what we say is that we recognize a tie to the colonizer, Spain.
Right.
That's why we're saying Chicano. Why do we insult Mexico on el 16 de September, September 16th, and that whole month, and call it National Hispanic Month? Why? That's an insult. That would be like calling July 4th and all of the month of July National English or British Month.
I hear that.
How insulting.
I hear that.
That's insulting. And it speaks to we don't know our history. And we're not keeping our history. So while the fiesta is wonderful, and clearly the organization that took over Cinco de Mayo kept it going and then built it into what it is today, NUSED and Veronica Varela, they clearly deserve that credit. And they have tried to maintain that. But what I argue for is let's remember why this occurred and why it came to the U.S. It didn't come to the U.S. as a fiesta, as a holiday. It came to the U.S. as marches and rallies, a day to stand up, be unified as Mexicanos and Chicanos to say, we come from this legacy. We come from this legacy.
Let's talk about this legacy. Let's talk about this history, and in particular, the role of your iconic father, Corky Gonzales, in this history of protest, this history of self-identification, this history of defining your own destiny. Corky Gonzales stood up for those principles. He was a civil rights leader. He was a human rights leader, and you have tried through the school that your father set up, continue with that legacy. Tell us about that school, both as an educational institution, the escuela, and also as a cultural institution in Denver. Well,
first of all, my father is absolutely an incredible human being that walked upon the earth, a spirit that walked among us, that was willing to take any risk on behalf of human rights, that he truly walked that talk, that you cannot, injustice anywhere, like Martin Luther King said, is just everywhere. And so we grew up with that. We grew up in a movement that was that he led, an organization that he organized, and eventually gave birth to Escuela Tlatelolco. Crusade for Justice gave birth to the Escuela Tlatelolco because he understood education as a critical factor in helping our people understand who we are, but not an education that you normally would find in conventional schools that in history books we're invisible in, and that there is no knowledge or recognition of who you are as a people. So he wanted an educational institution that would remind young people who they were, where they came from. And I don't speak from just this mixed blood, mestizo blood of the mixture of the indigenous and the Spaniard and the French and Europeans, but actually understood that they are from an incredible culture of people here that existed long before Spain came.
Right.
That's where that's what he wanted with Escuela Tlatelolco, for them to learn their history from the Mother Earth out, as Jose Marti speaks to in Mother America, not from European. And that you understand that you have that legacy to be true to. That legacy of indigenous blood that runs through your vein, as he speaks in I Am Joaquin.
In his famous poem.
Exactly, exactly.
So now, when was the school for? A quick history of it, and where it is
today.
Right.
It grew out of summer freedom schools that were happening at the Crusade for Justice on 16th and Downing every summer. And eventually we had a walkout at West High School, the largest walkout in the city, if not the region, that went on for 4 or 5 days. Students walked out in protest to the inadequate education they were receiving and also the racism that existed in Denver public schools. And out of that grew this discussion about having a school of our own. So to me, Escuela Tlatelolco, you see charters, you see new schools. It is the mother of school reform, and I call it transformation. I'm not settled. I don't like to settle with reform. I think that's just half of the loaf.
I'm with you.
It has to be, education has to be transformative.
Definitely.
And has to be political. So Escuela Tlatelolco was founded by these parents along with my parents that were activists in the Chicana movement who wanted a quality education, but an education that was based on social justice and human rights. So it started in 1970, K through 12, a model difficult to run, very rare to find, still continues as a pre-K through 12 model in what I call its third life. It was at the Crusade for Justice, then housed at Servicios de la Raza as a high school, and then we purchased our own building on 29th and Federal and began the rebuilding of Escuela Tlatelolco as the legacy school of the Chicano movement.
Yes. And you produce wonderful young graduates.
Absolutely.
Who go on to further education and also to serve their communities in many different ways, shapes, and forms.
Exactly. Part of our great legacy that was started with these incredible individuals that included my parents, who started a school down, imagine that, with no funds, no government funding, no foundation funding. How they did it sometimes I'm not even sure. And
determination and will.
Absolutely. And so out of that we have had about 72% of our graduates have their undergraduate degree, 22% have graduate degrees, almost 40 to 50% own their own businesses. But the beauty of Escuela Tlatelolco is you have the likes of Van Lucero, who is a major person in the Boy Scouts. You have individuals like Francisco Gallardo, who's head of GRASS, and came out and now gives back to his community by running his own nonprofit and doing his own work to keep kids out of gangs. So these, Lorenzo Ramirez, who is an incredible artist as well as performer with Sabor Latino, who has been awarded several awards for keeping the ballet Mexicano alive. That's estilo de baile, or style of dance. I mean, so individuals that have come from that. Gail Gonzales, who works with Free Speech TV, Maki Gonzales. I mean, we are now seeing grandchildren and great-grandchildren of graduates of Escuela Tlatelolco. But it's not just that you graduate from Escuela, that you also give back and be involved in your community, in your community's fight for human rights and social justice and self-determination.
Well, I just want to congratulate you on behalf of Free Speech TV for you and your colleagues and your team for the wonderful work that you have done and continue to do with the Escuela. It's just marvelous. I've had a chance to visit you there a couple of times. Nita, let's shift gears a little bit. You were part of a delegation of Latino leaders from around the country that recently met with the president in the White House. And I've seen a beautiful picture of you shaking the president's hands, actually both hands. He's got both your hands in both of his hands. Give us some background to how this visit came about. Tell us a little bit about the day itself and what it meant to you to meet the President of the United States, most powerful human being in the world.
Well, actually there is a particular program called White House Champions of Change, and during the month of March they were honoring individuals who exemplified the work of the likes of Cesar Chavez, because it's his birthday during that month. And
long live Cesar Chavez.
Que viva Cesar Chavez. And so several hundred people were nominated across the country, and then there were 10 selected to receive this White House Champion of Change in the spirit and in the honor of Cesar Chavez. And I was one of those selected, and went to the White House to receive that award and be part of a panel. And in that, they had the ability to meet the President of the United States, Barack Obama. So I do want to be, I was very humbled and honored to do that, and to participate in the panel. But I think the thing that was more important for me was to meet this man and to speak to him about the need to suspend secure
So what did you say to the President of the United States?
I said, President, I'm honored to be here and humbled. Thank you for that. I'm always respectful. My father taught me well. But I also remember that I also have to give voice to what I believe are issues that are important in our community. And clearly, one of the critical issues is the whole secure communities. The president has the ability, with just his hand and his signature, to that's right, suspend secure communities. Probably the one program that is the most detrimental to our community in particular.
Why is that? Talk about that program a little bit.
Secure Communities allows police officers, or when signed on in the memorandum, police officers become quasi-ICE immigration officers. They can then say to you, Don Rojas, because you're Rojas, and I think you have an accent, and I think you might be here illegally, I want your papers. You prove to me that you're here legally. What the hell business does it have? You don't give any more power to law enforcement than we already have to decimate human rights and to racially profile people, which would be happening. So this is one of the programs we have been fighting for a very long time. We think it's an erosion, absolutely, of civil liberties, and it goes against the whole. It's in bed with the Patriot Act that takes away those rights that we all struggle and fight for, and that other people have struggled and died for.
And a consequence of that is the extraordinarily high deportation rate under the Obama administration of Mexicanos and people from Central America, a much higher percentage than even under the Bush administration. How can the president explain that to the Latino community?
He's been trying to, but I don't know that he's done a good job of it. And I say the only way that that our relationship can improve with the president is that he also has the ability to stop those deportations and deportations, the ones we're worried about, Don, we're not, you know what, I'm not here to defend the rights of criminals. I am here to defend the rights of our community and our family and our children. And people that get caught up, absolutely, caught up in something that doesn't need to happen. We in this country have lost our humanity. We are in search of it. We are no longer humane. We're no longer seen across the world as humane and just. We are seen as inhumane and unjust. So for us to be invested in Barack Obama's second term, he surely has to take this on and give more than lip service to this whole issue.
What are some of the other pressing issues of concern to Latino communities, not only in Denver and the West, but across the country in this 2012 election year, when both Barack Obama and Governor Romney are going to be heavily courting the Latino vote? What do you have to say? What are some of the other concerns, not only of yourself, but of other Latino leaders around the country that the president needs to hear?
Well, absolutely the economy. I mean, you hear it through Occupy Denver or Occupy Wall Street. There's a reality. We don't have Wall Street. We don't have bonds and stocks. We don't have retirement. Our wealth, or any wealth that we had, is in our sweat and tears, our hard work, maybe owning a small home somewhere. That's about where we have had any wealth in this country. And so, while the economy is still critical. It is critical for us. When you look at, from the Pew Foundation report, that Latinos lost 65% of their wealth in this recession. And I say recession, hell, Don, it was depression. We're in depression for many of us.
Well, for the majority of people of color communities, they are still in this depression.
Absolutely, absolutely. So until, we can't, everyone talks jobs, but we have yet to see that translate into actual employment that makes a difference for families and our communities of color. It's not happening. That has to happen. That has to happen at a quicker pace and a greater commitment than it is right now.
Yeah. So, and there was a report that came out yesterday showing that both African Americans and Latinos, the numbers of registered voters has dropped since 2008, since the last presidential election. You would think there would have been more, wouldn't you? You think the trend would have been in the opposite direction. What happened here?
Well, Don, I tell this to politicians, I tell this to candidates running for office, I tell this to people waging campaigns for different policy changes, until it actually touches and translates for those that have less. they're not. Why would they vote? Why would they believe their vote would make a difference? They haven't. It hasn't translated that way since 2008. In fact, it seems it's gotten worse for our communities. So until that changes, you will not have people, coming out and wanting to vote. They don't see the translation into a better life, into a quality of life that is more just and humane. They don't see that. And when you look at it, it's also up to candidates. We actually are very high touch. I mean, our younger people are high tech, but we're still very high touch. Now,
high touch versus high tech. What is high touch?
High touch means you call me personally, you talk to me about my vote, you tell me how my voting for you will translate into improving my family and my community. That's high touch. Don't text me about it. Right. Don't get, I don't do email. Look at the digital divide between Latinos, right? I mean, we don't do that. But if you're coming out to this fiesta, then talk to me personally about what that means. And so until we have candidates that are actually our candidates or people that we trust will actually walk that talk, we don't show up. That's the reality.
Well, I hope this message can resonate as far away as Washington, D.C. from the heartland, from the Rocky Mountain region of the country.
I hope so too.
Nita, thank you so much for your dropping by our booth and chit-chatting a little bit with me.
Thank you for having me, Don.
And I know today's an important day in the life of your daughter. Today is her prom. Congratulations on that.
Well, Escuela Tlatelolco's baile is today, and they're all getting ready, and we're all real excited that they are.
Wonderful. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks
Don.
a lot.